some of the more coding-centric areas of Squid to go talk about the JavaScript API and how you can use that in your Squid development. And maybe you guys are just new to trying to do JavaScript stuff in Force.com. Maybe this can be a compelling reason or helpful tool in jumping in.
Guys, before we get rolling, I'll tell you everybody who's here. My name is John Nelson. I'm the solutions engineer at Squid. We've got Anna Wiersma, who's our support maven, as she likes to be called. And then we have Zach Maparath, who's one of our lead developers here. Zach's going to be running the show. Also, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to direct them at I think it'll come up as a host, as Squid host. Anna will get those, and then we will pass those along to Zach when he has a chance to take a breath. But in the meantime, we're just going to hand it off to Zach, and he's going to just get rolling with the JavaScript API stuff. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks, John. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the main place for you to find out about what you can do in JavaScript land with Squid are two places. One is the Squid Developer Guide, which is that if you go to the Squid website, you can get to the Dev Guide by clicking up here in the top right, the Dev Guide link, and that takes you to our to this site up here. And the other place is from our other places are our community, where various people have asked questions about JavaScript related stuff. If you search for JavaScript or API or some of the terms we might reference here today, you'll probably find there's a lot of good stuff in there about specific field renderers, for those of you who are familiar with that. There's also some tutorials that show you how to do some stuff, such as like mass creation of rows in a table or some other stuff like that. So it's kind of spread out in different places, but a good place to start and the place to go if you're looking for API information is to go to this site, the Dev Guide, where you can find, if you go over to the API reference, we're going to start today actually diving into the stuff related to the Squid model and some of the core objects of Squid, but this is a good place to go. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that and start with that. Before I dig into just kind of an introductory demo to what some of the things you can do with Squid, I just want to give kind of a high-level overview of what we're hoping to accomplish today on this. And we're planning to have a deep dive once the second Friday of same time every month, second Friday. And so for this first one, we're looking to go into how you can use Squid to enhance the functionality of things you can build with the Squid Builder. So we're not going to go into today how to build custom components and how to make custom builders. Those are probably topics for future deep dives, but we are going to show you some of the more practical stuff that can really be useful in your day-to-day use of Squid, and that's like how you can do little things to extend the complex logic of your pages, such as page title, table actions, and initiate Squid code. You can also do custom field renderers, and we'll show you some other stuff that will be useful. But that's kind of a high-level overview of today's deep dive. So let's jump in. The first thing I'm going to start out with is talking about what are some of the benefits of using the Squid JavaScript API versus some of the other API frameworks out there. So those of you guys, you may not be, I know different people that are signed up today, some of you guys are JavaScript gurus, some of you guys are JavaScript newbies, some of you guys are Force.com pros and rock stars, and some of you guys are kind of new to Force.com. So there's a lot of different ways people are coming from. But some of the benefits that Squid offers you in the realm of JavaScript land, number one is you don't have to write a lot of custom JavaScript promoting endpoints in Apex, so technical terms, but we save you having to make a lot of Apex code that is our endpoints for your JavaScript code. You can do a lot of stuff like saving, creating new rows, updating, and all of that, it can be done with some really simple API methods, which we'll go into. You can also store, we also do local change management. So when you're creating new rows in JavaScript with Squid, you get, if the user makes a change to a row, we're going to store the previous value. So if you do a cancel, you can just go right back and revert, and you don't have to manage any of that. we think with JavaScript you get way faster prototyping. You can build really complex logic into your pages and test it out, and you can do that all in production. You don't have to write Apex classes. You don't have to do sandbox to production deploys, unit tests and all that stuff. You can do really fast logic prototyping when you're working in JavaScript, and with Squid we can show you some of the ways that we can help you make that happen. With Squid you also get a lot of security infrastructure built in. You get full object level and field level security, CRUD, and row level security permissions. Every time you use a Squid API method, that's automatically happening. You don't have to worry about, hey, if I try to save this data, does the user actually have permission to edit this field? If the user doesn't, Squid won't let it happen. If you use the Squid methods, it won't happen. If you try to save data and the user doesn't have, create rights on that object, if it's a new row, or update rights if it's an updated row, then we'll make sure that doesn't happen for you. And if that particular row is not accessible to the user, you won't be able to edit it unless you have edit permissions. So a lot of that stuff's also, a lot of Apex logic behind the scenes that we take care of that for you, and you can initiate that from JavaScript with, just a few lines of code and tap into all of that. The other thing is we provide a lot of the metadata. We give you essentially the equivalent of, we're going to show you this in a bit, the Apex described field result and the describe as object result, all of the information about a given field or object, what type is, what is it, how much, how many decimal points are there on a decimal number, what objects does this point to. We give you all this in JavaScript. I'm going to show you that in a second, and you'll be able to just use that in your development and not have to worry about any of that. You're doing any of that yourself. So that's kind of a lot of stuff to just some high-level overviews, but let's jump in and kind of show some of that in action. What I'm going to walk through right now comes from the page I was just on, the Squid API model documentation. So if you go here, the Squid model, we document, we'll talk a little bit more about this, the Squid object, what the different things you can get at. But what I'm going to show here is actually scroll all the way down to the bottom. There's a few examples here, and we're going to walk through a couple of these and what's going on in these. So the first step is, what's actually going on in Squid in JavaScript land? Let's kind of start at the basics. So when you build a Squid page, here's the Squid builder, which both of you guys are probably familiar with. You really have two things. You have models, which are like windows into the data in your Salesforce database. So for instance, this model is getting these fields from the account object, and it's limited to just a single row. So here we're just getting the name, description created by field for the GenaPoint account. And then we're also getting contacts that are associated with the GenaPoint account. So whatever account was pulled into this model is down here. So for each, then the other thing we're doing is the other part is components, is what you visually see that talks to those models and the data in those models. So we have our field editor here, which is editing a record of an account record. We have our table here, which is editing its accounts, which is editing that account's contacts. So for each of these models and the components, there's actually a JavaScript representation that is in your page that you can interact with. So let's actually go into your best friend as a Squid JavaScript developer, the console, available in basically all major modern browsers. You use inspect element. So right-click or control-click on Mac, click inspect element. This will bring up the JavaScript console. So from here, just so you guys are maybe new to JavaScript stuff, your next best friend is the console.log command. console.log. We'll use that in a lot of our demos for kind of spitting out data that you want to have access to. So first thing is if I say console.log Zach, I'm just gonna print out what I just said. But the other thing you can do with the dev console is actually see which JavaScript objects are floating around in memory. So the main one we're going to talk about is the Squid object. So we do Squid, do that. Notice Squid here is an object with a lot of different properties on it. There's some different interesting things, in here. But you'll notice these correspond fairly directly to what's in our documentation. So if you go to the developer guide, you'll see there's squid.builder, squid.page, model, UI, utils, time. And some of those aren't in here because some of them are builder stuff, which we won't talk about today. But the main, probably one that you'll interact with the most is squid.model. So let's actually go a little bit deeper. Squid.model. So this will get you reference to some of the classes defined in this object, for instance, the Squid model class, Squid condition, and as well as a bunch of methods, kind of static methods on the model object. But the one we'll use first is to actually get at JavaScript representations of our models. So right now on our page, we have two models. We have an account model and a contact model. And we can get at a list of all those by doing squid.model.list. This will give you a little list. Here we have a model. Here we have so we'll see we have two. We can also get at them in a named, we can get a particular model by its name by using squid.model.getModel. So I say, model.getModel account data. This will return us a JavaScript representation of our account model. So let's show you what all is going on here. First thing you notice is, as I mentioned before, all of the metadata that Salesforce defines, or most of it, related to the account object is available here on this model. So for instance, if this model is creatable by the running user, so by me, it'll show that here. So account data.creatable is true, shows I can create it. Same thing with updatable, deletable, stuff like that. We also have a list of some other metadata, like what's the key prefix, what's the label, the plural label, object name. That's all here. And then there's various other properties, like is this a custom object, is it queryable, is it searchable, stuff like that. Most of this is available from the describe s-object result, Apex object for those of you familiar with that. But getting down to the stuff that you'll be using more as a Squid developer, there's the actual data in the object stored in the data key, and here is our account row. Here's the GenaPoint row. So if we go to the first entry, here's GenaPoint, here's its ID. We automatically calculate the 15-digit ID for you as well. Here's its record type and some of the other elements. You'll notice it's created by. It's actually another nested object. So created by.name is Zach McElrath. Created by.id. The conditions on this model, we had one that was it was a URL parameter condition. Here's a JavaScript representation of that condition. You see the value that we found was this GenaPoints ID. There's a lot of stuff to look here. I really encourage you guys, go into your console and just do some mess around with this. There's a lot to explore here.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier today, and I was mentioning the fact that every time I ask one of our other lead developers, Ben, a question about how to do something, the first thing he does is pull open this console and start to kind of pick apart to see what's possible. So this is a really good tool for just figuring out if what you're trying to do is accessible or possible within Squid.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, John. If we go into the field section and the fields map, fields is basically a ordered list of the fields that you requested. Basically directly corresponds to the order in here. And then fields map is kind of a named way to get at them. So fields map dot name would get you the account name field. So looking at this, you'll see, again, there's a lot more metadata related to the field here. So, it's the label's account name. You can have up to 255 characters, stuff like that. So all kinds of, there's a lot of stuff here that's not populated because it's more relevant for different fields, but lots of stuff there. So this may be interesting, but what can you do with this? How does this relate to what I'm seeing on the page? Is this just static data? Well, with Squid, it's not. The JavaScript representations of what's on your page are live, dynamic stuff that you can work with. So for instance, if I wanted to actually say I made a change, oops, I think I need to. Like my page doesn't have a save and a cancel button, so I'm not gonna be able to do much. But I'll show you. You could actually do some stuff. We'll save. We're gonna say that when I click the save button, it's gonna save both the account and its contacts. Let's refresh our page. Okay, now we got some saved. So if I go down to my model here and I edit the gen point account description, say this is a really big company. So you'll notice now that the save button comes up, and if I hit cancel, it would get rid of that change, revert to the original. If I click save, it would actually commit to the database. If I say save, it's now committed, stored. DML has occurred for your developers. This is a real commit, but if I go make a change here, all of the changes I'm making are actually stored in JavaScript as well. So if I go back, get my model again, squid.model, like get model, account data, we can actually go take a look at what changes have been made. If I go into the changes object here, you'll notice that for this account row, there's actually, here's the change I had made to the description field. If I go back to there's also another node called originals, which keeps track of the original data. You'll notice it used to be, this is a big company, but the user's input has changed it to this is a company. So what I can do, which is pretty cool here, I can actually go into my model and interact with that data programmatically. I could say squid.model.cancel, and this will do basically exactly what the cancel button is doing here. I can throw out, oops, actually, good point.
You're the right one.
First thing I need to do is I need to actually get a model. That was just a generic one. All right, so I got my account data model, and now I'm going to say cancel. You'll notice this reverted to the original version, and the page updated. So the page is listening to the JavaScript API. If I was to go back in here and say, this is another I can do similar. I can do save, and this will actually commit to the server. So you save, and now it's committed. You'll notice it actually returned a result here. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. But basically, these methods, if you want to find out what all you can do with this is what the API is telling you here. If you go right here for notice the cancel method and the save method, this is exactly what I'm just doing. This is all the stuff you can do to your models. Let's see. All right. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is kind of work through some of the example here. Let's actually create. Let's create a new row in our model. We're going to create a sample record here. I'm just going to copy this because it's some good data. So make sure you have our birth date. Okay. So in our contacts table here, let's interact with this through the UI. Let's call Dave Smith. Give him a birth date. Let's change the year. Okay. Save a record. So, 2013, that didn't work. Oops. Get back. Something's not working there. That's interesting. Okay. I'll show. I know what's going on. I'm messing it up. I'm going to go quickly turn something off on this page. Here we go. All right. Never mind the man behind the curtain. Okay. Go back to 1982. Here we go. All right. Now we got our field came back. Our age field came back populated. Let's create a new row with this. Actually, before we do that, let's actually get some data from this model. That's a better place to start. If we want to actually access, so if I wanted to say through JavaScript access the data in this model, get our model. Oops. Just go back to the previous statement I executed. Say, what we're going to do is we're going to say get first row. We'll go to our contacts model, and when I do get first row, that kind of goes into the .data array and grabs back the first object. So here's our Dave Smith. Here's, it's got all his data. It's, notice he's associated with this account, and his birth date, etc. So this is the raw data. And if we want to now actually interact with this, we can make updates programmatically as well using the update row method. So if I go to, we're going to say row, we're going to store locally. Row 1 is squid.model.getModel contacts. You can also get at this using the data array. So row 1 is that. Now we're going to say C model is just going to get a shorthand reference to contact model. Okay, we're going to say C model, and now you'll notice it's showing you all of the available methods on our model object. But what we're going to use is update row. What this is doing is this tells Squid to make an update to a particular row and particular fields. So we're going to say we want to update row 1, and we want to update the last name field. And the value we want to set it to is Jenkins. We do this, and now you notice the save happened in our save happened in the API. We haven't necessarily told this row to update yet, but if I go to my API, we can go see that model was in fact updated. So go to first name. His last name is now Jenkins. So we've done that. But the other thing we've done is in our changes, that basically Squid's keeping track of the originals and let's go to originals, keeping track of both the originals and the changes. So here's originally it was Smith. First it was Jenkins. So if we do a cancel, we'll throw that out and it'll go back to what it was originally. The next thing we can do is we can actually create new rows programmatically as well. So what I'm going to do here is just going to copy and paste this in. We're going to create our variable in JavaScript called George Bailey. And we're going to say George Bailey is, we're going to go create a brand new row. Now, when Squid creates new rows, it takes into account any conditions on the model. So, for instance, here, if we go back to our contact model, the account ID is set to basically Genapoint's record. So any new rows we create will automatically inherit all those conditions, as well as any default values and stuff like that. But when we create this row, we're actually going to pass in some additional quote-unquote conditions to set on that row. So if I say field name is field first name, value George, field last name, value Bailey, and birth date, let's create this row. Oh, curly braces. Oh, I think I'm doing it. Let's do this. Let's do this a different way. I'm going to go, that's what I meant to do. I'm going to jump into, we're going to actually initiate this through a page title action. We're going to run some JavaScript. I'll call this create George Bailey. We'll call it George. And we're going to talk about this just briefly in a little bit, but there are many different ways you can add JavaScript to a Squid page. The first one, the one that you use probably most commonly, is Inline Snippet. What this is going to do is just basically run a named function, pretty much, that's stored, so you can use this throughout your page. We're just going to throw, and we can start writing some code in here. So say C model equals squid.model contacts, and then what we're going to do is run this code, and then we'll say C model. Let's just do that. Let's just make.
Field value.
Oh yeah.
And you still need the comments.
Yeah, I need the comments. That's right. Okay. Okay, so let's jump in here, and now we have this button which should execute some JavaScript code when I click it. We'll click Create George Bailey, and there's a new row added to our table. If you go into, that did not work very well. Let's see, so that's, okay, so there's one thing we'll talk about a little later, and that's that we need to, now let's start out, this is a little complicated. We're going to go back to we're just going to go create a brand new row, and then we'll be able to edit it. Let's just say create a new row. I'm going to go back to write this. Let's just not do that. Okay, we're going to go back into JavaScript, and we're just going to create a new row. Get model. And we'll do model create row. Okay, so this gives us a new row to work with. And if I say go through here and create some new records, we can then work with this. So we'll show another example in a bit where we're going to create. We'll actually be able to create. You could use this to create multiple rows. You could use this to do a lot of complex cool stuff. But so you can, from JavaScript, you can create rows, you can update rows. Another thing, and then you can save them to the database, and you can make cancels. You can revert to previous values. Another thing you can do, we're going to jump back to. Go back to the API doc. Another thing you can do that we are still out of time, we're going to talk about. Another thing is that you can interact with the conditions in your model. You can turn them on and off, and then update the data in your model so that it pulls in new rows so that meet those conditions. So here, for instance, in our contact model, we have a named account ID condition. What we could do is we could go change that, or maybe a status condition or something like that, and then update the data in the model to basically go re-query the server for data that matches that. So, yeah, so what I'm going to do here is actually, we're going to create a model on, demonstrate that, we're going to create a model on cases. So create a case model. We'll say conditions, it has to be tied to our account. Our account. So use our model merge condition to tie it to our account. And then we'll pull in the subject field, say subject, priority, status. Okay. Then we'll go in our other tab over here. We'll display our cases. And we'll pull in our fields. Priority, status. The next thing we'll do is we'll add a named condition which we'll be able to filter on. So one of the things we've introduced in the spring release that's very powerful is we've tried to change the way the conditions work and allow you to do filters on your table. With this, we're going to go affect the status. Basically, filters affect conditions. And one thing you'll see today is everything that we are showing is how we actually build components. We use the Skuid API to build our table, to build all of our internal functionality. We're not using anything special. This is actually how we're doing stuff. So what's happening here is the filters are actually going to run this kind of something like what I'm going to the snippets we're going to run in JavaScript. So we'll say any status, and then we'll say we'll prepend status. Let's go check this out. Change back to our page. Same cases table. Let's go add a few cases. Broken news. It's not working. Let's give this one a closed or escalated status, and another one here. Something bad. Okay, it's on hold. Okay. Now we have a few cases of some different statuses. And when we change this filter here, what Skuid is doing is it's going and updating it's changing the value of the named status condition, and then it's updating the database. So we're going to actually simulate that here in JavaScript. We're going to get our say status condition is, or actually let's first get our contact model. C model equals squid.model, get model contacts, and then status condition is, we're going to use the get condition by name API method. So we'll say we named it status.
Okay.
So, it's the condition. We're getting the case, yeah. So the status condition. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to change the value of that condition and then update our model. So I think it's contacts. Or cases. Oh yeah, good point. Good point. All right, so as reminded, oops, go C model is cases. So write that. Okay. And then do status condition again. Okay, status. All right. So let's make sure we have a status condition. Cool, we got that. Let's make sure we have a C model. Okay, we got those. Those are all good. Just clear this. Okay. Now we're going to initiate C model dot set condition. We'll pass in the condition we want. Status condition. And the value we're going to set is, we want to show just on hold. Just on hold. That's the value of the condition. Now, all we've done is we've gone into the model, and notice our second condition now, its value is on hold. So we've updated the condition, but we haven't told the model to refresh itself yet. To do that, we're going to use the update data method. This is a very powerful method. You guys probably use this a lot. But if you do C model update data, this is going to refresh the whole model using all of its conditions and fields and get new data. So just changed it. We could go back and do that again. Say C model, status condition, and say new, and do C model set data. We'll go back and change it. So basically, what the filters are doing here, and but we're doing it through JavaScript. So you could build your own filters or something that does this. You can run this from any snippet. So a lot of good use cases for that. Okay, so that's kind of a intro overview to some of what Squid can do and how it ties into your page. Something we didn't really talk about is that components actually are accessible through the Squid object. You can get at and you can actually instantiate them. We won't talk about that now, but there's a lot of interesting things there. You can use you can see different properties of the page, like the page name, what version of Squid's running. A lot of cool stuff to look at in these other methods here. We'll use some of those, but you should definitely take a look at those. So going back to something I kind of breezed through earlier was, how do you get JavaScript into your Squid pages? What are some ways you can use them? The main ways that we recommend that you get Squid into your pages are through this JavaScript resources panel. We let you do several different types. One is inline. This is basically just adding lines of JavaScript to your HTML page when it loads. This is the most basic. Resource name here really means nothing. It's just
no handlebars.
Yeah, we're just adding stuff straight into your page. One thing we recommend doing here is kind of embedding you'll see this syntax a lot, is embedding your stuff in a closure with around Squid. So this basically gives you kind of secure, private, local settings, so you're not going to mess with anything. This is like a secure.
So you don't override something.
Yeah.
Somebody else doesn't override something you're doing.
It's like a little bubble that you're safe to play inside of. So from here, question is, what are some things that you can do with inline JavaScript? One common one that people would do is to make some modifications to the way the page behaves, different properties. For instance, a lot of the Squid UI components use jQuery or jQuery UI functionality. So one thing you might want to do is to maybe say change the functionality of the date picker. So one of the reasons I think my thing was goofing off earlier was I was trying to do this. So if you wanted to go change the functionality of the date picker, you could use the jQuery UI. I'm going to show that. You guys, you can search that, but you can, there's a lot of stuff you can change with the defaults. So for instance, if I wanted to allow you to change the year using a pick list, I could change that here. Just do some, I could set the year range of the date picker to be, you know, like 1990 to 2000, something like that. Some cool stuff you can do right there. A lot of people also do some, you can do some crazy hacks with the page. Lots of stuff you can do here. I'll do another thing in a second. But the other types, the big other one we were talking about is you can do external. This is great for loading in JavaScript libraries. So if you wanted to load in, say, another third-party JavaScript library from a CDN, like I don't know, underscore backbone, something that you like, you could do that here. Maybe Google APIs, stuff like that. The other one is very Salesforce specific, and that's static resource. Static resource, the pros of using static resources are that you can use them across, it's like a way to use code across multiple pages really easily. So when I had my inline resource back here, this only applies to this one page. This JavaScript's only getting put into this one page. Now a static resource, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, if you go over to your Salesforce setup menu, go to develop static resources, you can create new static resources. They're basically like, I mean, you could have images, all kinds of stuff, but you can use this as a place to put JavaScript files. So for instance, I created this new one called common.js. You want to make sure that you do cache control should usually be public here so you can see it, but basically go into your favorite text editor. Whoa, where's that file I was working on? I create a new text document. We call this, basically do what I was just doing back over here. Get some of my code. Oops, I got rid of it. Just back to inline. Get some of my code. Go into a text editor, and we'll call this common stuff.js. Now we have our text file. We can go back into a static resource, upload it. Say common modified desktop. There we go. Common stuff.js. And we'll say JS to use lots of places. Now we've created a new static resource. And if we go into, the negative to this is that you usually have to use Sublime or Force.com IDE to actually edit this stuff, but it is nice because it's easier to deploy static resources across orgs if you need to do that. And, I mean, if you want to use a really sweet JavaScript editor, this is a good way to do it. So here's my, I now have this, I can now edit this using the Eclipse IDE. I could say, console.log hello world in here, and this would basically happen in every page that I include this static resource. So going back to my page, if I said static resource, now if I type in use, oh, that was a really terrible name for a page. Very complicated. JS to use lots of places. To use lots of places. This will load this into this page. And I could go to another page and do the same thing, just load in the static resource, and that same JavaScript would be executed on every one of those pages. So those are some of the benefits to using static resources. It's good if you start doing a lot of these things, and you'll start getting, resource, and all of a sudden you have a very crowded space in here. Sometimes it's nice to have it all in one static resource file. It's good for collaborative work. So that's one of the benefits to using that path. The other thing we do here with inline, going back to inline stuff, we provide some nice wrappers to help kind of save you time from doing some stuff. But before we do that, we're not going to use those because we kind of hide some stuff that you should know about. So the one thing we've kind of been hinting at so far is the use of snippets. So call this inline code. What is a snippet? A snippet is basically a named JavaScript function. You can use the Skuid Snippet API to say squid.snippet.register snippet, say hello world, and say function, it'll do some stuff. Let's say console.log, hello. So basically what we've done is we've registered this named function that can be executed throughout Squid wherever there's snippet execution places. So what are some of those? We talk about some of those in our API guide where all you can use snippets. We go over the snippet section to check that out. But we'll make a one of the places is actions. If I say hello world, this will go execute the, oops, got to make sure, capitalization matters here, that's important. Execute the hello world snippet. So if I go back to my page, I have a hello world button. I click that, it'll give me a nice little hello, saying hello a lot of times. So basically a named way to execute stuff. We can do this from row actions, we can do this from global actions in our table. All these places allow you to execute snippets. But the powerful thing is that each one of those snippets is passed some context that is relative to what you're doing. So if you're on a row, the snippet hands you the row. If you're on a table, the snippet hands you reference to the table and its list and the model that it's associated with. So it's really easy to make changes to those. So we'll show some of that in a second. So I just want to talk briefly about how you get Squid into your JavaScript pages. Now I'm going to show, I know we're running short on time, but I'm going to just do a couple quick examples of some of these, some of the places that you can use the Skuid JavaScript API. So first one I'm going to do is show an example of, I'm going to go over to my account, or my opportunity page. Let's go to opportunities. It's my fall 12. Okay. We're going to go to an opportunity page made using Squid. And over in our activities panel, there's a row action here, a little checkbox, and it says mark completed. What this will do is actually execute a snippet. So I thought we'd go, this is a good example because, well, let's click it and show what it does. It takes the row that it's working with, it changes the status to completed, and then it saves the row, and then it also updates this completed tasks area. So we kind of separated our open and completed tasks into two areas, and so it'll update the bottom row to pull in all rows that now meet that criteria. So mark completed, changes the status, and then the completed tasks area gets rerun so that it will show that row. So take a look at how that's done. I think this is a good example. So we'll click over here to edit our page. And all right, jumping into resources. All right, let's get a bunch of inline resources here doing different things. We've got some snippets, we've got a static resource. The one we're looking at is this tasks.mark completed. Right here, this is inline. The name doesn't really mean too much, but you'll notice there's we're registering a snippet here. Let's walk through this a little bit. I think this is a good example of, there's some complex stuff going here, but we'll skim over some of that. But each snippet is passed an object of context. So here we've called that params, we can call it whatever we want, but it's important to note that the first argument that gets passed to this function, you can access this with arguments, the JavaScript arguments object. We could have said, we could have just left this out entirely and said their params equals arguments 0. Just that's an important point. When you're using inline snippets, which basically our inline snippet resource type, it automatically creates this line for you and just wraps all of your code in this this little construct here. But in order to get at these context variables, you need to say something like params equals argument 0 to get at that first thing. But when we're not using the inline, it's actually a lot kind of clearer what's going on. But let's take a look at what you're actually being handed. If we did a console.log here, we could say, well, what is this params object? What's in it? What's in it is something. First, we hand you the model for the table. So we hand you the tasks model. We hand you the underlying Squid list that's kind of responsible for the table. We hand you the item that the row action is on, and a little more stuff going on here that needs a little more explanation. But params.item, this will basically give us the item, and so then what we're going to do is we're going to go use the update row method that we talked about before to change the status to completed. We're then going to use the jQuery block UI plugin, which Squid includes that, so you can use that in any page. But we're going to block the tables element pretty much, and we're going to have we're specifying the overlay CSS, and the CSS, we have a little message that says what marking task is completed. And then we're going to use the save method to initiate the save. Now, save is asynchronous, so you know, if you try to do something right here with the result of that this catches people up. If you try to say, you know, get the first row, and it may not be done yet. So what you really need to do with saves is to use a callback function. This basically says, as soon as the save is done, run this function. And it tells you some stuff such as, it basically gives you a result object that says, like, you know, did it all succeed? You know, did your inserts, did your updates, and did your deletes all succeed, and stuff like that. We're not really using that here. We're just assuming that it succeeded. Kind of dangerous, but what we're doing is, as soon as the save finishes, we then go call the update data method, and here what we're doing is we update both our tasks, our original tasks table, as well as our completed or historical tasks model, and we update them, and then we unblock the UI so the user can see it. So that's pretty much what we just showed. The other thing here, though, to note is that we're actually we're doing a little trickery here so that we can use this method from a math action. So if we had, you know, task 2, do some quick dates or get it ahead. Okay. What we can do is we can actually, I think this is in here. We can actually math mark completed, and this is actually executing the exact same snippet, but here it's passing in the context is. Let's go back to our snippet. The context has a little list. So what we're doing here is saying, in the global action context, or the math action context, you get handed a list, and you can say list.getSelectedItems. So that'll let you do something to every one of the items that the user selected. And when we don't have that, we just use the param.item. So this is kind of the multi-purpose snippet in a sense. But so let's mark completed. That'll actually do it to all of those items and move them all over to that table. So there's a quick example of a snippet. One other thing I wanted to talk about is what's an example of some inline code you could run that uses the API. If we go over here to our opportunity products model, this is basically saying what products does this customer want. So we can add, you know, all the important stuff. Say that they want one hammer of Thor, change the price, Gondolf. So we can save this. But the trick is with normal Squid, when you do a save, it's going to save whatever models you actually changed. It's not necessarily going to go update all the other models on the page unless you tell it to. So one problem with the opportunity model, because we're not doing page refreshes to kind of save you time, is that this amount field is not necessarily going to be updated. You know, with Salesforce, when you change add products here, the amount field changes to reflect that. So basically, 25 plus 3 should be whatever's, or 3 times 4. Yeah, that should be whatever the amount is. But what we did in this page to make that work, we'll go over to our we did an inline snippet, or we did an inline block of code. Now, this is, I'm going to introduce a little bit, just one more thing. That's the concept of an editor. So what we're doing here is we get references to our two models, our opportunity model and our line items model. And then underneath the hood, every Squid component, or almost all Squid components, use this API method called Squid UI editor. If you want to find out more about this, go over to the Squid UI object. There's some good docs on here about this. But what this essentially does is allows you to, it's kind of the baseline functionality for models, for talking to models. So what we're going to do is we're going to say our, this editor is we're going to register it with our model. And what that does is whenever that model is saved, canceled, updated, anything like that, there's some methods that get called on this editor object. So one of those is handle save. So whenever a save happens, this function is going to get called on our editor object over here. So what this does is it's going to say, did the save totally go through? Was it a success? If it wasn't, we shouldn't really do anything because it doesn't really matter. But for this scenario here, what we're going to do is we're going to say, whenever our line items get updated, so when we create when we add the staff of Gondalf or the hammer of Thor, and then we click save, we want to go update our opportunity model so that the amount field gets updated. Basically, it's really common for roll-up summary fields if you have those on a parent model and you have child data, and you want to make sure that those roll-up summary fields stay in sync. You should do something like this. It's pretty simple. All it does is it says if the opportunity model has changed, we don't want to cancel out, and we might want to save it. Like, so if I went through and changed the name of this to default 13 updates, and then I went and did this right here. Really, that I want to make sure that I both save my opportunity as well as saving my product. So it's a little thing to watch out for there. Otherwise, it's just going to go update the model so that it gets the new values. So that's another example of an inline resource. So we're about out of time. So we're gonna open it up for some questions, and you guys can give us any feedback about. We're also looking, just which of all the things we talked about today, what might be the most interesting for you for a future deep dive? Which ones would you rather talk about first or most? So we'll open it up for questions and feedback.
Yeah, obviously, because it's a presentation, everybody's on mute. So if you got a question, go ahead and put it into the chat window, and we'll go ahead and let Zach answer that way. For everybody that hung in there, we thank you guys for sticking around. This is the first of hopefully many that'll be, and we're really hoping to make them as helpful as possible. So any feedback you guys can give us too, as far as what you want to see and what was helpful or what wasn't helpful, we definitely would like to know, because we want to make these better and better so that you guys can really get the most out of your time and get the most out of what you're doing with Squid. Yeah, guys, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And we even got you out of here 3 minutes early, so we'll see you guys next time for our next deep dive. We thank you guys for your interest and for your attention, and so we'll take care.
All right, thanks everyone.